maybe, I'm gonna turn.
I'm muted.
Yeah, mute the Instagram, mute your phone. That should help. We'll hear each other from here and then talk from here. Should be good.
Does anyone hear any echo?
Yeah, Ray, I think our audio is all good. We should be able to go.
Yeah? Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tea House. We're multi-apping, streaming, and I'm very excited to partner with Elyse as the first proper episode in the Tea House Hangout with such a promising start, as we're going to be talking about the future and where we are right now. And I've been really contemplating on one word, which is sustainable, and I have to be honest that it's been really troubling me for quite a bit, ever since particularly the Nomad Tea Festival, and I was just sort of wondering what that actually means, and then led me to check on the dictionary, and sustainability says causing little or no damage to the environment and therefore able to continue for a long time. So I think we're a bit too late to apply this word in both concept and in our practice. So I guess this is a time for us to come together and be very cautious when we say this word, because it has its outdatedness. So the general, I guess, since it's a tea house vibe from the Grass People Trees, the Masters Tea House, Virginia and George have been there, Mafalda and Adrian have been there. So I guess it's a tea table. It's a space where it encourages openness and trust expression from all angles. And in the tea house, we deal with the truth. And in the tea house, we also talk about things that come from the roots. So I guess I'm going to start by welcoming you all to come into my home, I guess. And also thank you, Elyse, for joining in today and blessing us with your experience and knowledge and expertise. I'm going to start by asking, I guess I'm going to start with the word the truth. Elyse, what do you see in the truth of sustainability, being sustainable, and what's your experience in seeing this truth or living this truth, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it means a lot to me. I mean, it's been the focus of my work for over a decade now, actually close to 20 years now. I'm getting old. But it's so interesting. The prompt of bringing this conversation together and your idea that it's too late to be sustainable is something that I'd never thought about before, which is incredible, and it's so true. You know, we've been so focused on trying to hit this ideal of sustainability, which is, it's impossible. And what's ended up happening is the term has been co-opted and used to the advantage of the whole system that created the problems in the first place. And so it's really discouraging to see that the power dynamic is in the direction towards, that violence. It's essentially violence, maybe not physical violence, but it's a violence in taking something from somebody else, assuming power over somebody else. The whole concept of colonization, which, has been kind of the term used lately in the conversations, which is great. So unfortunately, I think there's an echo in Instagram. So, maybe we can keep rolling in Instagram so people can see that we're talking and see what's going on. But then I'll pin a comment that people can join, through the other social channels to see it on the computer. But yeah,
I think it might be from me because I don't know whether I managed to mute it. Is it better now?
no, I think there's still a little bit of an echo. So, yeah.
Sorry, guys. Thank you for your patience.
So yeah, the topic means a lot to me. It's been my work, and up until about 6 months ago, I genuinely really felt like I was alone in this journey, in this kind of battle, I guess, to help the world help itself. And so, I guess changing the nomenclature would be really important. Because, you say something like stop being sustainable, and, people that have been trying to be sustainable may find offense to that. And I don't think that's your intention there. Your intention there is to help people realize what the goal really is, which is just making the world better. Ultimately, I think it can just be summed up to that. So, yeah, learning to ask more questions, because this is another thing that I've realized over the past few months is that our education in modern society, we go to schools, yes, we can read books, yes, we can Google the internet and read blogs and discover new things, but ultimately the majority of people in this modern world are educated by marketers. And, you think about things like fact checking. There are national level fact checking organizations that will fact check the news, fact check books and peer reviewed articles. But then when it comes to our marketing and what we learn through Facebook ads, or what we learn from billboard ads, or what we learn from all these things is never fact checked. And that's a big deal, I feel. And so how do we mass fact check marketers and make sure that marketers are being authentic and honest and contributing to our knowledge base versus hindering it? That's a huge problem that I've recently started to spin the wheels on. I know it's outside of the realm of my own work, but there's no reason why I can't participate in trying to find that solution. But from the other direction, we can just become more responsible marketers. And that's what we have control over ourselves as tea business people. So we're doing it, Ray. We're doing the work.
How do you see us jiggling around in this confined space?
Using technology. I think that's the main thing, and we're doing it right now. So doing more of it, empowering the consumer to be able to read through it is going to be really powerful. Let the consumer know what's right and wrong for them versus trusting a label, trusting, the biggest perpetrator of this is fair trade. And so whenever I used to pitch to investors, potential business investors about, they say, oh, the tea market is only this big and you're only going to attack a small niche segment of the tea market, so it can't be a big business. And I say, no. We're not trying to infiltrate the tea market. We're trying to bring goodness to the Fair Trade International market, which actually the retail value of Fair Trade International is $50 billion a year. It's a lot of money people spend, pretty much solely because they trust that label. They trust that certification. that it means something, that it means the people were paid fairly, or that the carbon emissions were, that's what I thought fair trade meant. That's actually what I thought organic meant as well. And as a food scientist, when I was fresh out of college, I went through the fair trade certification process in a factory. It took me about 6 months to do the whole process, and I was super jaded. I was like, this is not organic. Like, this is BS. It's just this like a administrative hoops that you could jump through, and it's really just a thing you pay for. And fair trade is perhaps even worse and perhaps even more costly, with less accountability about how that work is actually influencing, the origin of our products. So just to give some context, I say this so many times, but maybe there's someone watching that hasn't heard this before, but Fair Trade International is a for-profit organization. They require a farm, as well as all the points of value add throughout the value chain, to be certified and to be audited annually and paying the annual fee. When they come and audit you, they only hold you accountable for following the local labor laws. So, in a place like West Bengal, where Darjeeling is located, the local labor laws is, I think it's up to like 125 or maybe 175 a day, rupees, which is like $2 a day, or maybe a little over $2 a day. So as long as the farm is paying that, and then paying the annual fee to Fair Trade International, which in some cases, I've asked some farmers how much it costs, and it's like $30,000 US a year to maintain this certification. So if you really think about it, it's like the really sustainable farms that you would think would be sustainable, they're family owned and high quality. They don't. Some of them won't even do $30,000 a year in revenue, which is fine, right? Like I've said this so many times before, it's not about money. It's not that they need to make more money. It's just they're not even, that certification is not even accessible to them. So it's false, it's BS, and really we shouldn't be believing it, but yet it has so much value in pool, not just here in our conscious communities like in North America, but all over the world.
I think this is the very reason why I call it Stop Being Sustainable, because I think we've come to a point that the conceptualization gets so bad that we stop thinking and investigating and asking questions just because this little triangle gives us so much, we've really given it so much trust, and nobody really comes to question that. And which is why I think we come to a point that is a bit too far to overly trusting a word or a organization. And I think, the point of saying stop being sustainable is to actually understand what it means, not just to people who certified under sustainable, whatever the label is, but also what that means to people who don't do that. And I as a tea business owner, I invented my own word, which is beyond organic, which means we cannot afford to do the organic certification, but the land is so ancient, it existed before the certification, which is very, 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 very young. So to not to say, this is how we do it, but it's just really to put a question to people. And in my experience of dealing with people in big fancy hotels, when I throw these questions to them, it really made them think. Okay, there's such a thing exists. It's as if before that they've never thought things like that, which really also to me is a good learning curve. It's sort of, you need to really, as a farmer, or as a maker, or as a tea business who supports those people, you need to be really courageous and stand for your own truth, and to say, no, there's actually it could be another story, another angle to approach this. So I think that's quite important.
Yeah, yeah. I like that, beyond organic. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even
Good.
doodle a little thing. I'm just sticking on our packaging. I think that would do it.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to do it. Beyond sustainable, beyond organic. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I
just
think that the danger is we must not become really trapped by it.
mhm,
Is this sustainable? Is this ethical? Or is this free of chemicals? Whatever that means, whatever that says to you, we don't get so tricked by the concept, any type of concept, even just in terms of drinking tea, you know, read less label, but drink the tea, ask the right questions, and see how you feel. This sort of thing that we covered quite a lot in different kind of sharing experiences. But I think we must be very aware. The consciousness in our head, we must always be aware and very alert when we see this sort of thing and make our own judgment
mhm.
and perhaps approach things in a different way. And I think it would only happen when we all come together to challenge that. Which leads to my next question. I sort of feel like the overarching game is that, yeah, for the big players, they set up their own roles, but then now, for example, for the makers and pickers and people who you work with on the Tealet, how do you create your own ecosystem for the supply chain, or for the connection to be closer, for it to be more transparent? How have you approached that in your own experience?
Just information, purely information. So when I'm traveling and meeting people in business or meeting farmers, they always ask me, "Oh, do you require organic certification? Do you require fair trade certification?" They assume as like this like hippie woke buyer coming around, that's what I'm looking for. I say, no, I'm not requiring any of that. I'm not even requiring that you don't use chemicals. What I require is that you tell us. And so before we work with any of the producers, it's usually about a 6-month vetting process. It's a lot of time. And ideally, it involves me physically going to those places. And just a simple step on their soil will tell you everything. You know what I mean? There's a lot to be told, and how the soil smells and feels. And you can't really communicate that through a computer. But we have a 30-question survey that a farmer has to produce, and that's all public. So this is not just private information that we hold for ourselves to make our own vetting decisions. Like, this is information that we share with the tea business buyers and also with the consumer. And that list of questions I make available online too, for the consumer to know, even beyond tea, that they can use these questions with all the products that they consume. Now, are you going to get an answer to every one of those questions for every product that you consume? Absolutely not. But if you start with this work, there will be products, and it'll like motivate you to spend more time shopping at farmers markets or getting to know your local agriculture ecosystems. And then when it comes to your international commodity products like chocolate or tea or coffee, you can use this as a baseline, to hold the merchants or the vendors that you work with accountable for acquiring this information. And so when it comes to the whole agriculture practice question, we kind of categorize it as conventional, natural. We just call it natural. Natural is like one of the most unregulated words in the U.S. food system, so we're just going to use it. And then organic, and when we say organic, that's certified. And we do have a small handful of farmers that have invested that time and money into being certified organic, just because of the pressure from the market. And really what I've noticed because we have the data of how tea sells. And what I've noticed is that if a product is certified organic, it doesn't necessarily sell more or have a greater value in the market than if it's not certified organic. But being natural does have a lot of value. And that shift has been, a big difference from when I first started. So when I first started, the whole organic certification was a very big hot point for the business buyers. And these were mostly like established business buyers, like maybe they had been building a tea brand for 10 years. So they, already had an established brand and established distribution, but they had like pigeonholed themselves into being organic. I mean, some of them went as far as to put organic into the title of their brand. Because that word used to have so much pull, but it's good. It's good news that that word has less pull now. That and it first started from the business buyers. They're like, maybe they were in it for 5 years and realized, man, this is absolute bullshit. What am I doing trying to chase this thing? And it's just like everything is working against me. Pricing is higher, your availability and supply chain is more limited, and so that is changing. But there is a significant difference between the sales of conventional tea and natural tea. There is a difference in those two categories. So yeah, it does mean that the business buyers are mindful of that, wanting to share products with their customers that aren't using chemicals. And there's a whole line of different attributes that different businesses are attracted to. Some businesses are attracted to female tea makers, which is wonderful, and they want to tell that story, to their customers. Some are attracted to communities that have prevalence of human trafficking. And so they want to tell that story about how, this tea is, persevering outside of the challenges that, exist in those communities. So, I think that the buyer is definitely becoming more educated, especially new businesses. If someone's starting a new tea business from scratch, it's almost like guaranteed they're going to want to make the best choices in their supply chain from day one. It's the businesses that are like more established, that are big and that have a lot to lose if things aren't fitting in the boxes like how they need them to be. We don't need to name any brands or any names. We all know who they are. And what really gets under my skin is when they start co-opting these terms and making you feel good and then telling you an inauthentic story. An inauthentic story. There's like so many that you and I have just shared with each other, just even like an Instagram post. You think it's so, it's so simple and harmless, but it's like, you can absolutely tell that that's fake. Like one of the main ones that I see a lot in tea marketing is matcha, right? So matcha is like a huge trend right now. Everybody's wanting to get into the business. There's like these young entrepreneurs, maybe they travel to Japan, they discover matcha, they meet a matcha supplier and they decide, okay, I'm going to make a matcha business. And they, for Instagram, matcha is wonderful. Take all these beautiful pictures, build a big following. And then you see a picture of the CEO standing in a tea field saying, oh, here we are in our matcha field, visiting the field. And it's like, no shade structure around the field. You can tell that it's obviously just a standard Yabukita Sencha field. And how that happened was not their fault. It was a case of ignorance, right? It's not that CEO's fault. It's the fault of that supplier they're working with. So matcha is a very siloed business. It's a very siloed industry. It's very hard to find farm direct matcha. You have to work very, very hard and develop those relationships yourself, and in some cases develop the factory yourself for blending and grinding the matcha, because the matcha industry in Japan is all about that final brand, the refiner, as we call them, that step in the value chain where they will collect tenchas from all over the country, blend them to create the product profile you're looking for, grind it, and then that goes to market. And so when these business owners come to that factory and they say, hey, like direct trade is really important. So, I'm saying this is direct trade. Can you take me to the tea farm? They say, oh yeah, I'll take you to a farm. And they just, drive them up to the mountain somewhere and just say, okay, photo shoot, do it. That happens all the time. And, an uneducated consumer will just accept that and just say, oh, wow. And they get educated by that. And that's false education. And so that was like back to my point about the responsibility in being a marketer, as we're actually educators. We're actually some of the most powerful teachers, even more than in our schools, because people listen to the commercials, they listen to their products, it's what we've gotten to. And it doesn't just happen in matcha. I think you had pointed out a photo that you found online of some
Yeah.
pluckers like using a plastic bag to harvest their leaf.
Yeah. So this is very interesting because I think in the where I grew up, in the where the tea house is, it's all about going back to the roots, to the point that you can't go back anymore. So you really question where things come from, not just tea, but information predominantly. Where did you get this information? Yeah, but right now in this trend, we're talking about cultural appropriation here. Is there's people take a little leaf from the big tree, and then to say this is a big tree. And one of my I think the story of the tea leaves is there's a very influential tea figure from the Instagram account. I saw a photo. It was posted about Guizhou's tea farms, and there's a woman picking the tea leaves in spring, and the local Guizhou lady, was picking the leaf and putting it into a plastic bag. So, because I grew up in Guizhou and I also work in the mountains, two questions I have is, why this lady who seems to be, picking tea leaves all her life, why would she be so blind to pick a plastic bag and to put her tea leaves in? Because particularly in springtime, you would pick one bud or two leaves so you can go and sell it to the makers and make good money. But if you put it in a plastic bag, it means within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, the bud will become yellow or brown. Mm-hmm. So this obviously isn't what the Instagram post was saying. And also, it also says how much depth this person and effort this person had put into in putting out this post and telling people about Guizhou as this influence. Yeah, I'm sick and tired of that.
You know what probably happened, Ray? That influencer was probably in their 4-wheel drive vehicle driving around and noticed this picturesque woman with the child and said, "Hey, can I take your photo picking tea?" And all they had was the plastic bag.
Absolutely. And to me, it's not, the West then sees this story, it tick all the visual boxes. There's a tea plantation and there's a very poor woman with a child in her back and picking leaves. It triggers some emotional boxes, yeah?
Yeah.
I understand how it works, but I'm more concerned with my own people, because when the child grow up, let's say they make a documentary about that, this very child will grow up seeing how the West has been projected their own world and thinking that this is their world. They're going to be poor, they're going to be the least advantaged, and they're going to be seen this way, and hence this is where they see themselves. This has been happening all over Africa with slavery, and later on, like today and everything. And now it's happening in China, in everywhere. In India, it's been happening for so many decades. And it's about, I think when we talk about sustainability, it's really about empowering the very people who have the connection and make us this product, give us this offering. It's really about, we need to think about how we can empower them and tell their stories in their own way, so they can then educate their own children, or the younger generation can grow up and see, this is who we are, and we're very proud of that. And we're not going to make all these changes because this big brand comes and tells us so. It's because we live by this. And I think that's very, very important. because talking about cultural appropriation, I think there's just so many layers of damage, so many layers from geographically, generationally, mentally, spiritually, physically. And now we can talk about the physical damage of cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big
and
one.
you shared about the matcha story. And I'll share about the pu'er story, or maybe the mushroom story. Yeah, the mushroom tea. What's it called?
The like reishi mushroom. Yeah, Ray, your audio.
Reishi.
You're back.
So the reishi, in Chinese we say 灵芝. 灵 means sacred. 枝 means branch. It's a sacred branch, and it has a reason for that. Is in the old days, even when somebody is about to die and they tried everything and they couldn't figure out any other way to revive this person's life, they would use this particular mushroom to make soup for this person to see, okay, last resort, and see whether he or she would come back. So it's not something you would grind into powder and then dissolve it into water and drink it every day. That's the first thing. And second, is very sacred, and it grows wild in the forest, and mushrooms such as spirit of the lands, they need a certain ecosystem. They need this, and they need what they need to grow. And if you found them, they're not going to do you good. It's as simple as that. And people take this idea that Chinese people make mushroom tea. We don't. Just to say it, I'm just going to say it, we don't make mushroom tea. We make mushroom soup. Yeah? And we only drink it at the end of April and the end of August. That's it. Nobody does anything more. And if you come across a thing to say, that's going to be good for you, drink grinded mushroom tea, A, it's going to taste horrible, and B, it's not going to be good for you.
Yeah.
And I think you have two, and I mean, like pu'er and matcha is the same story.
Yeah. Well, and I think that these stories are powerful because it brings it home for us. Sometimes, that poor woman and her baby's future in Guizhou in a picture on an influencer, it's very easy for us to be disconnected from that story. So, if I don't think that people should be feeling guilty that they're not connecting with that story. We're selfish beings. It's fine. And so telling that story of how colonization and appropriation can actually do physical damage to us as individuals is a very powerful story. And so, brands that are popularizing mushroom tea are actually doing a lot of damage, in the world. As well as like a lot of Ayurvedic herbs, like golden milk is a really great example of that. It is being marketed as this casual, trendy daily drinker. You go to India and you ask an Indian person about golden milk, they say, yeah, just like the mushroom soup. They're like, yeah, my mom makes that when I'm sick. And it's a very sacred, powerful medicine. When I went to go source turmeric in India, the farmers were all giving me like the highest medicinal, because when I go, I'm like, give me the highest quality product you have, because that's what I want to introduce into the market. I want to make sure that we get the best value for you. And so they say, yeah, this is the more medicinal one, and then the buyers say, hey, we can't use medicinal grade turmeric because our customers are drinking this every day. We are dosing them. And so we have to be responsible. And there are a lot of brands that aren't responsible. And the pu'er market is one of those. It is so big. Actually, we were talking the other day about this, and I remembered Sohan came up with a word for this like community of people. He called them pusaders. These are the pusaders. I like that. These are the folks that are just chasing the high. And there are brands that are marketed and geared specifically to these pusaders. I'm not going to list names, but you guys all know them. They're hipster, they're masculine, they're egotistical, they're punk rock, cutting edge. Let's get high, let's get messed up on tea. And, to each their own, that's fine if you do this responsibly. There are folks like Jeffrey McIntyre or, no, I'm sorry, Jeffrey McIntosh, uh, who has a lot of experience with puerty, he has a very different idea about it now, that like puer is a very strong medicine and we have to be very cautious about how we take it and enjoy it. And just because these folks boil the heck out of it and drink it like this doesn't mean that we need to do that. Like, our cultures and our bodies are different. But there are some people that, like, when they go source and Yunnan, they'll tell the farmers, I'm looking for the most unique, high energy thing. And they'll get it. And, like, that can be very dangerous. I've seen some products on the market that I just think, wow, this is like putting a lot of harm, And then it's also encouraging something else that I wanted to make sure that we both got to touch on in this conversation, which is kind of the source of all of these problems, which is like unbalanced ego. And I use the word unbalanced. A lot of people just say ego. It's like ego is getting in the way and making problems. And it's like, ego is not bad. We all have ego, but it's unbalanced ego that's bad. It's an unchecked ego, and tends to be more the difference between masculine and feminine. And this doesn't mean man and woman, because men can empower feminine energy and women can empower masculine energy. But the kind of definitions of the differences between masculine and feminine energy, they work in harmony with each other. Overpowering one or the other will cause problems. Toxic masculinity will cause problems, as well as like rampant femininity taking over can also cause problems too, because they're different energies, they're different paradigms. And when it comes to ego and masculinity, it's a very selfish and very like pragmatic, without looking at the long term and not looking at the full ecosystem on things. And so, the conversation around sexism and gender balance is a worthy conversation to be in this forum, about how to keep these things in check, especially the toxic masculinity, which, completely disempowers women from being in positions of leadership. I mean, this position of leadership that we have, Ray, is very unique. This is not very common. And so with that privilege, we should also do the work to help uplift the rest of the feminine energy, to bring that balance of mindfulness of the future, of how our actions now affect actions later on. Well, the masculine energy is great. It's aggressive, it's pragmatic, it's like, take care of it now, serve ourselves now, which we need that, but we also need that balance too.
I think it's like... I learned this from Kung Fu, is the most powerful force comes from the softest spot from your heart, which is when you see fear from a different angle, then it becomes the most powerful thing. So I think, ego, to me, my understanding is, the negative side of it comes from fear. And the fear that we are not, why do we drink, let's say, why do we drink so much pu'er or green tea, is because, let's say, I'm worried about aging, or the, health magazine says in order for me to look fantastic in my yogi pants, I have to drink this and it's very slimming for my butt, whatever that is. So I think capitalism sees that as an opportunity and keep on injecting fear in us. So I think in terms of consumer, in terms of people like us running a business, and in terms of everybody else involved in between, I think this is the thing I feel like there's actually the work to do in terms of looking at your fear. Why you choose to buy a product before you actually put your card down and make the purchase? Do you really need it? And I think that's one aspect which is very important to me, is also like, how do you choose a tea? How do you approach a choice of tea, of just your day to day? Why do you choose a pu'er, and why do you keep on choosing pu'er over and over and over again? Is it because your tongue you're enslaved by your tongue or by that feeling? Or is it really because your body can take so much pu'er and you're just genetically so skinny? Yeah? So I think there's a really deeper question we need to ask there in terms of how do we turn fear into our power? Because once you recognize that and acknowledge that, it becomes a really, the feminine source can be the most formidable source force. So when you actually hit it, you can hit very long and very loud and very, very powerful. So I think I don't really see, in China, we don't have so much talk or conceptualization in workspace about she's a woman, so these are the things she needs to do, or he's a man, these are the things that they do. It's more like, because I guess it's part of overpopulation is so competitive. Whoever does the job well comes and do the job. So, I was once asked by a magazine interview, what does white shirt mean to me? And later on, when I checked the context, I realized me, the only person who comes from a non-white background, have a very, very different understanding of what white shirt means. Because here it's all about empowerment. It's all about having the equal right. But, like you said, it's about a balance. It's not about something over something. It's about these things be kept in a balance. In society, in economic terms, in social terms, and all kinds of terms. So I think, to me, like, the white shirt just basically only symbolizes purity and transparency. That's what it means to me. So I think, to me, in terms of, feminine or masculine, I think from my approach, it's slightly different. And I really think, again, we sometimes jump into so much concept about this is a dude thing, this is a women's thing, and get so trapped by it. And women, talking about equality, and men talking about the opposite of it, or whatever is in discussion. I think we wasted so much energy on arguing over each other for our righteous views, but actually we can just be. I am a person who shares tea, who happens to come from Guizhou and happens to be a female. It's not a privilege, it's not an underprivilege, it's just how it is. And this is how I do it. And that's just it. And I think, but I know this is going to be challenging, particularly if we go into the world, let's say, the hipster coffee world. Yeah, I'm just going to say that, how masculine that has come across to me as a female, as a Chinese female. Mm-hmm. What that actually, the experience for me is very different to somebody who looks different to me and who speaks different to me, So I think that is also, to me, it's slamming on my face always, whenever that happens. But I think in here, I really believe in balance. I don't believe in the absolute 50%.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never met a female tea boss in China. I've met a lot of females in the tea industry in China, and usually they're gracefully serving tea, dressed very beautifully, very slim, very graceful. I will say I met one female tea boss, and she was awesome, but she was actually from Hong Kong, so maybe a little bit different culture. But I don't think any culture in the world, there's not a single one. I mean, maybe there's ones that are different, but I don't think any culture in the world is immune from this issue. And I used to have the very same attitude. I'm a newfound feminist, so this is all like kind of new for me. Like, I used to have the attitude of like, I'm not man, I'm not woman, I'm just am, and I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to be powerful. And so it made me blind to these issues because I just powered through them. But then, once it was actually one of my investors, one of the Silicon Valley investors that got called out in the Me Too movement, is actually a good friend of mine and one of our investors. And I kind of saw that behavior, and as his friend, never held him accountable. Not to say, oh, you shouldn't be, flirting with girls. It's just like, if you're going to flirt with girls, understand your power dynamic between them. You're the money man, and these are all CEOs trying to get their companies funded. Of course, they're going to consent to whatever, you know. Yeah, that's just a little plug on my newfound feminism. So I think it's really important, just like with the whole conversation, when people say, all lives matter is actually a very racist statement. It's the same thing. By not addressing that there's a problem and a widespread problem, and that we are victims of it. We don't have to behave like victims, but just addressing that being female alone, just that quality alone is enough to face oppression, face handicaps and challenges, is the first step. And you're right, specialty coffee is like the main perpetrator of that. As like a female, most of my clients are female owned businesses. So they're small scale tea houses, tea shops, tea distributors all over the world. And specialty coffee, fourth wave coffee shops, is a great channel to get this great tea into. Because these baristas care about origin, they care about, the technicals, they want to learn more. But a lot of my clients can't even get to their pitch. They walk into the coffee shop, the barista, even if it is a female barista, is a very masculine female barista, and will immediately doubt their authority or their knowledge. But then, a bro tea salesperson comes in and they're immediately, hey, bro, what's up? How's it going? What tea do you got for us today? It's a very different response that you get. That the place for the woman is either, plucking the leaf so gracefully, or brewing the tea so gracefully, but, not being a major, boss. Like, it's just, it doesn't fit into that paradigm. And so we got to hold ourselves accountable, not only for not behaving that way ourselves personally, but holding our friends accountable for that too. So, it's a very toxic thing that is actually inhibiting progress and inhibiting the truth to prevail. Not to say that women are needed for that to happen, but just that balance is important. And, that whole Crusaders thing, I've never met a female Crusader. They're all men. So.
I just wanted to add one thing about it, because I used to work in the fashion industry when I was very young, in the early 2000s and late 90s. I used to be a fashion model, and being a female, being underage, being in a man's world, I have experienced so many different layers of what that means, being a vulnerable woman in the male's world. Mm-hmm. Some of them are really not pretty, some of them very traumatic, but some of them it took me years to realize certain things. So I just wanted to share here is what I learned is really own your experience. They're not bad or they're not good. They're just your experience. That's how life happened to you. And I think is not to let anyone to come and dismiss your experience, whether that's conceptually being a woman or women entrepreneur or whatever that is. But I think it's if I stand in the post office, there's a white man, which happened a few days ago. There's a white man looking at me like I am the virus in the whole shop and looks like he's gonna come and kill me. When the police ask me, I'm gonna tell him, and he's gonna tell me, no, that is not what happened. He just look at you. But I'm just gonna say, no, you don't know that because you don't experience what I experienced. How can you dismiss that from my point of view? Mm-hmm. So I think that it's not because it's not about what you actually have to say to the police or to other people. It's really about how you feel when you own those experiences and feelings and knowing is no one can deny that. And I think as a woman or as an immigrant or as a Chinese or as whatever you are, know yourself and really stand by it and know your roots. And it's nothing, I think it's about this is a question about self-creation. And I think within that, then it doesn't matter how the society labels you to, whether you're in a least advantaged places or more advantaged place, then you can still navigate. You can still have your freedom and your power, your ability to do what you set out to do and to believe what you believe in. Mm-hmm. So I think as women or as people who are perhaps in the less privileged environment, I think it's very, very important. But it does take time, it takes work, it takes ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of work, it's deep work, and it's not just trusting a label and trusting this person selling you this thing. Oh, feel good, you bought this thing, you've done good work. It's very deep. And sometimes it's not even involving the products that we're consuming. It's involving our own actions and our own cultures and values that will then indirectly trickle into the products that we consume. But it feels like we went a little off topic, but we absolutely did not. I think that this is very relevant, to talk about the gender balance. But you had commented on something earlier about when we allow that marketing, that inauthentic marketing story to convince somebody who they are. So like that baby that's gonna grow up in Guizhou is gonna see that post and think, oh, I am poor, I am disadvantaged, I don't have as much as someone else, so I'm not as good. That's a really important point here. And it works both on the poor person's side, on, oh, these poor people we're trying to help, but it also works on our side too. That if we can live in more simplicity and more satisfaction in that simplicity, then things will be more peaceful and more happy. So like that's why I always say it's not about money, it's about dignity, it's about autonomy and dignity. Like just giving more money to somebody is actually gonna like do more damage than it's gonna do good, and then it's gonna further encourage that insecurity that we're not good enough. And then on the consumer side, so like the marketers have convinced us as a mass market, they've convinced us that our identity and our worth is measured by how much we consume. And that's wrong too. Like our happiness and worth is dependent on our values and success and like satisfaction in what we have, and what we need, which is, food, shelter, family, community, which is very simple things. You don't need money for that stuff. But we've been so convinced, both sides have been so convinced that we aren't good enough, that we need more, that we completely lose touch and lose any opportunity of achieving happiness because we're constantly pursuing that thing. So when it comes to actionable things, right? So the main action, the title of this podcast or the title of this talk is Stop Being Sustainable. So we need to offer some action. And perhaps, and you said this, and both other conversations that we've had, you said drink less tea, and that's all this, that's this. It's like finding satisfaction in less. And if we can do that, even in baby steps, it can make worlds of difference in the long run.
I think so. I think if we're talking about simplicity, we have to, well, to me, when you talk about simplicity, the image that comes to my mind is a forest. It's so simple. Everything does its own thing. It's very green. And there's no noise, there's just birds and just trees and flowers and everything. So I think simplicity is really to cut back to the essentials, strip back everything, concepts, doing, actions, analyzing data, information, and even us talking here. I'm sure if we all go into a forest, nobody would talk, it would just be silent. So I think when that applies to, in terms of consuming, or the opposite of consuming, like supplying the consumption. I think is also like stripping down to the very basics, and the supply chain being very basic. I.e., we're not gonna tell the story that doesn't tell who we are. We're just gonna keep it simple. This is where we live, and this is what the trees are, and this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And the middleman being simple, keeping it simple, just as that, and also the consumers, choosing things as with a simplistic approach, right? Mm-hmm. So I think is like you said, is to do with how much more do I need, or how much less I can actually just live happily, and I think is with that simplistic approach to navigate in terms of your consumeristic choices. But also I think in general, if we can simplify how things work, which I think is the beauty of having smaller businesses, like all the SMEs, or there's such a simplicity in and beauty in being small, because we don't have to go through all these lengthy processes of getting a certification, doing all of this, and everything takes 14 months to get it. And then the layers of information gets lost, and then the end of it, the consumer gets nothing. Everyone is confused within the whole chain, and then the farmer's message never gets delivered. Yeah. So I think I guess we're here. We have a responsibility to emphasize the importance of simplicity. And even appreciating tea, what is your simple approach to that, and also like, what does that mean to you, and in terms of your day-to-day life, and and all the choices you make is absolutely essential. The world has gotten too complicated. Anyone who manages to simplify things wins. And there's no fighting about it. It's just, I think it's absolutely essential, keeping it simple.
Keep it simple. The only issue I'm thinking now with this from a marketing perspective is that the concept of simplicity is not so sexy. Maybe post-pandemic, it might
be... It's becoming hipster.
Yeah, so we got to make it sexy in some way. Either the word simplicity itself will become hipster and sexy in itself, but you brought up a good point about the forest, because when I think of the forest, yes, I think of simplicity and I think of peace and quiet, but I also think about infinite complexity, right? All of these different there's so many million, cajillion living things just like in harmony with each other, creating that simplicity. So, and that's kind of sexy. Right? So maybe I'll be thinking about this, about what is a way to popularize this concept of finding satisfaction in the simplicity and in the flow. It can be very powerful and will work everything else out. But that's it. There was a question that came in, Ray, maybe we can address it. And it's more practical question, which is good, because I think we've been talking very high level this whole time. So Samson asks, so there's a question that no one really wants to talk about, but when being ethical, where do you draw the line between your own profits, margins, versus paying farmers fair prices on their products? The true cost of high quality tea per gram is significantly lower than the pricing you see on most vendors' sites. I know of very few Western vendors that will reinvest into the farm's infrastructure using their margins to help with sustainability.
Good question. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess so. So basically, it's not going to work that way. Like a reinvestment into infrastructure in any kind of business model, like a successful, strong business model, won't work. It doesn't work that way. Like the business model itself has to be rooted in that ambition to create sustainability or create positive. Stop the word sustainability. It's not a good word. To create the opportunity for progress. It's a better word. And so, it's a whole business mentality that has to change. And large business, it's like impossible for them to change. It's impossible. I shouldn't say impossible, but it's very, very hard and not likely that they would want to change. It's the small and medium sized businesses that will be adaptive and agile to make those changes in the foundation of their business, not to be a charity. And so, that has proven to not work. And I encourage anybody in business to shy away from this concept of 10% of our profits goes towards this nonprofit that plants trees in the forest. And that's exactly what fair trade is too. So fair trade charges a 10% premium. So like when you have that fair trade certification, your products are automatically 10% higher in price in the market. And so the concept is that premium, half of that premium goes right back to the Fair Trade International organization. And then the other half goes back to the farms, and then the farms are kind of told how to use that money to develop the infrastructure, social infrastructures, so like hospitals or plumbing or electricity. But then there's no accountability about the sustainability of those infrastructures themselves, because this was just like a charity handout. There was not like, I don't know. So that's why I'm a really big fan. And just a little background on me, like I come from a charity background. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. So I used to do international development work in Africa. And I was really jaded on that because that felt very unsustainable. And it's like all of this money getting pumped in, and maybe only like 2% of that money is actually affecting any kind of progress. That's not the exact stat, but that's just what I felt. Like a very small portion of what was actually being invested into this, and value put into this, and trust put into this nonprofit system that's like empowering progress is actually doing that. Versus business, business, when you have some type of like profit drive built into it, it's going to be motivated to continue. And if that profit function is rooted in the principles of progress, the same that the nonprofit would have, then that's just going to like exponentially create progress versus the charity model. So I know, Samson, I didn't answer your question exactly, but I just think that the current consumerism corporate business model is not going to adapt to this. It's just impossible. And if Starbucks starts saying that they're donating 50% of their profits to helping the world, I would still call bullshit on it. Like just building strong business models, supporting small businesses, they're going to be the most agile and able to create this progress.
I vouch for that. I think when I started Grass People Tree, before the business was registered as a limited company, I was confronted with questions like, are you a social enterprise, or are you a limited company? Are you this and are you that? Yeah. So again, I can't stress this enough, is which concept are you going with? Which one you surrender to? So, and of course, with the social enterprise, I have to serve the immediate community. I have to tick all the boxes. I have to be British. I have to be this and that. So I don't get to do that. And with the limited, so it's measuring against that. And in the end, I realized it doesn't matter what this company is. And also, how do you define the ethical? How do you define whether or not your business is ethical or not? It's up to you. And this is the very reason why you start your business anyway. You have no one to answer to but yourself. So I think I'm only talking, I also might not be helpful in answering Samson's question, but I can only speak for myself, which is, I think, do what I think is right. And that thinking of what is right is always, always, always changing, because time is changing, your mission changes, your action, month is a different compass of, am I being ethical? Can I answer to my own people, to my home? Can I answer to all of you here? And this is just a question I have to ask. And whatever activities come my way, it's just about the decision you make. And again, it's about a balance. But because we're not multi-million pounds businesses, I can say I'm staying true to myself. But once you get to beyond certain capacity and size, you no longer answer to yourself. You answer to many people. So how do you keep a balance with that? That is your core. How big you want your business to be, how many people, and what are the other people you want to answer to. Mm-hmm. So I think if you're thinking about starting a business, I think that is the only ethical question you got to ask yourself, because it is about yourself. But again, don't get too trapped with ethical business. It's like sustainable again. Yep.
All those terms are interchangeable. I mean, I guess, the moral of both of our stories is don't trust the big guys.
No, I agree.
Virginia had said that reconnection is a possible word that is somewhat sexy, other than simplicity. Reconnection. Reconnecting with the roots, reconnecting with the origin. I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to throw that around, but finding some term. And a lot of times these terms, like direct trade, the story of the term direct trade, how that term became a part of the lexicon, was not from any government, was not from any trade association. It was literally 3 coffee companies. The CEOs got together. They were all competitors, but they all got together and they said, hey, we are all, single origin, third wave coffee companies. We need to come up with a word that differentiates what we're doing. And so they came up with that term direct trade, and they individually just started using the term. Their strategy was like, if we just put this term into our marketing, put it out there, and a couple of years later, it's a legitimate word in the dictionary, or I don't know if it's in the dictionary, but it's an understood word by the consumer. Now that word has been so co-opted now that those original founders of the term have abandoned it. Like they all agreed at the same time that they were gonna take that word off of all of their marketing, take it off all of their websites, because it's lost its value. So I don't mean to be pessimistic that whatever we come up with now would go through the same path, but that's how things work, So if we come up with ideas, it doesn't mean that we need Starbucks to make it popular. We can do it ourselves. There's a lot of power within our own networks. We're hundreds, if not thousands, strong of like-minded individuals that all want to see. We want to see good tea in the future. And really, to be honest, if we don't start acting, there won't be good tea in the future. That is a very real, not threat. That is a real future. And so whatever we can do to preserve the culture and the craft of good tea, we need to do it, right?
Yeah, we need to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think in terms of the invention of a word, as in for people to resonate with it, I get it. But it's like the word sustainable, when it gets abused, then we need to jump out of it. We need to detach it and then find another word that hasn't been abused and then going with it. I like that, I think it's constantly knowing word is there as a vehicle, but word is not the destination. It's helping us to understand and work under a common goal. It serves only that purpose. Don't get too trapped in it. And I like the word dignified. I really like that. I'm also I think the word empowerment has been abused also. There's a lot of word being abused. So I'm not going to talk about that, but I think dignified is a good start. But at least, even I don't use that word, I think it has always been the dignity, and also I guess to me is the integrity, diversity, the leave contains the stories of the people, and I think that is something so much worth for us to celebrate. And it has so much beauty to it, and I think the world will come. I think we just keep on doing what we're doing, you know, the word will come, sure.
But once we figure out what word we want, Ray, we've got to go make a TikTok dance around it, because that's the only way we'll break it in.
For sure. Does anyone have any other questions?
I see Mafelda reaching. She reaching for her unmute button.
I can sense that coming 20 minutes ago.
Oh no! Oh, I unmuted you. That's why. Let me ask to unmute you. There she is.
I just wanted to ask if both of you, talking through what that means for your business and what you want to convey to your consumers. I really identified where you said, drink less tea with drink better quality tea. Like stop drinking low quality and demanding it to be every single day, and instead give it the dignity, give it the integrity that it deserves by using it as a top product, by seeing the value in it. And I don't think that people see the value in tea anymore, and that's one of the big downfalls of the industry today. We were so focused on making it accessible and making it widespread that along the line it just became a nothing product for a lot of people. So to bring value back to tea and to make people understand, if you love something, it doesn't mean that you have to have a lot of it. It just means that you have to give it value and also buy quality. Do you guys portray that to your customers, or are thinking about doing so now after talking?
Yeah, I sell tea by the 15 grams, and I charge at least $1 a gram. And I feel like, and when I first started doing that, it was like a complete shock. My peers in the industry were like, Elyse, you're not going to sell tea. And I was like, that's fine. I don't need to sell it. I just want to set this bar, And so, when a new tea liver comes in that has no reference point of how much tea should cost or how much loose leaf good tea should cost, and they just accept that, it's a great learning point for them, because then they take that 15 grams home and they really cherish it. Versus for the same $15, if you went to Whole Foods, you could get, a big box of tea bags. And that's what doesn't have value. You take that home and it's like, oh, that's just a big box of tea bags. Versus someone comes here, they have a really nice experience at my tea table, and they take this tin home and it's like, yeah, this is like really valuable. That's the way that we can do it. But it's painful to do that, because maybe you won't be as competitive as a business and you won't sell as much. But that's the power in having strong principles and strong values, and just holding strong to that and kind of setting that bar for your customers, versus just, trying to play in the current system.
Math, when I still get people saying that your tea is more expensive than drugs. What's going on? especially in Brixton, without little white bag, they wonder what's in there. It's so expensive. But I think in order to say, when I first did market research for how much I should sell it for, there's no benchmark for me to look at. Not just within the tea industry, but in coffee, in everything. So then I realized okay, I can sell it for however much I want, just whatever I think it's worth. So then it's about the calculation of, okay, how much these people making are getting, and how much I'm selling it for, and how much value people are getting it with. We did a calculation. So if we're selling 20 grams, each one of the servings 4 grams, so that's £3, just over £3 a serving. But if you can brew it for 20 times, that's less than 3p, 2p a serving. So we always do this comparison when somebody comes and ask me about that, your tea is too expensive thing. So in fact, it's not. So I guess it's knowing what your values are. Mm-hmm. So if you're selling it very expensive and saying it's unique, how unique is that? And yes, it has to be the best quality. If within the world you're saying you're so unique and you're good products, then you need to have the truth to back up. But I think in terms of the market, that means we then go to different niche. We're not selling teas in Whole Foods, for example. We're these people who selling tea with stories, with dignity, with integrity. So, but the flip side of that, I guess, in the capitalist world, is gonna take much slower. It's a very slow process, but whoever who comes and see with you eye to eye, see this value, treasure it, appreciate it, they are the people gonna stick with you always, and they're not going to leave you because they value as you value it. So I think it's about us finding the balance of, okay, how am I gonna pay my rent and pay the business cost while I decide to go on to the slow way? Is the balance. So thinking about if I don't sell, or if I, in my case, the tea is so batch based, we can't go and sell like 1,000 kilos. So quantity isn't the thing for us. So in terms of quality, what we can do apart from selling the tea, what else we can do to sort of help the revenue stream to become more paralleled rather than just one dominant. And, in terms of stockists, or in terms of experience, in terms of education. So I think, to me, the new trend of this is not about the quantity, is about the quality and the depth we go with every one of our customers. And we know them, we know what tea they really like, we know what they do. They're like families, just like in the tea house. And this person comes, we know, with this cup of tea, I brew them lighter, not very strong, because, we know them. So I think it's about having that sort of family vibe or community vibe, I think, and really reconnect, or making the relationship tighter. And I think for me, I was saying to Elyse the other day, like we want it to be global small business. We don't want to grow with one business into 100 employees. We want to keep it small. And, for me, it's maximum 12 people in the team. That's already like max. But really go into depth with everyone who within the organization and with the customers and everyone involved. Everyone enjoys the journey. So I think the value comes from that. There's so many layers of values, you create within your company and also with your customers and with your products and services that you provide.
Yeah. So what I tell people that I work with that are like, oh, how do I sell the tea at such a high price? Until the market is at the point where they understand that value inherently, like where they'll see a tin of tea and say, oh, that's valuable. I want to get that. Vendors need to repackage the value that they give, where they're not just selling the loose leaf. Maybe they're selling an entire experience. They're selling education with it. They're selling community with it. They're selling something, they're augmenting the, the dried leaves with something else, so that the consumer can rethink the frame of value of tea outside of what they have been educated on, which is just this cheap commodity thing that you like mindlessly drink in the morning before you go to work. That's the main tip that I have to give to the businesses, the small business owners that I work with that are struggling with this.
I have customers who would buy the tea as treat. They know it's treat, but they'll still go to Tesco's and buy green tea bags. Yeah, and that to me is fantastic.
Yeah, that's a step in the right direction. Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be better though if we could have. I mean, so like with the network of growers that I work with, we work from, some of the teas are super artisanal and cost, $3 a gram, $4 a gram, wholesale, to like, some of the processors that we work with in like Assam, for example, they have like artisanal small scale factory, but then they're also government mandated to have the large scale factory. And so, we kind of have a range of teas to work with, although, if I'm selling like that commodity, really cheap tea from these guys, I'm not really helping them. Like there's not a good margin from them. It's not good for them, but at least it can fill in that gap between, that high level connoisseur, small quantity market to like brands that are trying to be in Whole Foods. And all of 2019, I just aggressively pursued that. I spent my entire sourcing trip putting together tons of tea from Nepal, India, and Sri Lanka to fill into a shipping container so that I could, make the shipping rates competitive, with the market price of tea here. And, I went to World Tea Expo and had a booth there. We, definitely had a very popular booth there. Everybody was there. Even the big businesses were there, and they saw, oh, you're doing commodity tea now. And I was like, yeah, we're trying. It's not necessarily commodity. It's still coming from these single origins, but, we're trying to fit into the status quo. And like, it all fell through. And the few partners that were serious ended up buckling to the pressure of the market and becoming very inconsiderate and very much against what this whole movement is about, even though their brands claim to be ethical and claimed to be, full of love. And those business leaders are full of love as people personally. Yeah, they're great people. But it's the pressure from trying to fit this ethical product into the big box system that's just, it's not going to work. So I've given up on that. I am, I definitely still want to pursue my container ship idea, because that just sounds really great. If we could fill an entire container ship full of good ethical, not ethical, just good. I just like to use the word good. If we could fill it with good products, tons and tons and tons of good products that are returning good profits or, good opportunity to the producers, I'd be very happy. But I've just I've given up on that strategy of trying to fit what we're doing into the big box model.
Same here. But it really took some time to realize what Grass People Tree is doing is not, it doesn't fit in. It doesn't fit in, and so you have to sort of pave your own way and then find your own people. And it sometimes is quite frustrating, because when you look at data, none of this data says anything about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And even just when we say, oh, you sell tea. Yesterday, I got a message from a friend who I train Kung Fu with, and says, can I buy some of your nettle tea? I'm like, what? Nettle leaf. Can I buy some of that? So even when we say about tea, there's tea and there's tisane, so that's different. And there's tea, the tea in and tea in food, and then tea in loose leaf, and there's Grass People Tree, and there's it's just it's its own thing, and I think it's coming to realize that made me feel so much more comfortable now, because before it was this anxiety as a founder. It's like, okay, where do I fit?
Yeah.
But that is the wrong question. I think it's like, how can I become comfortable being me, just being me, as in Grass People Tree being itself? Mm-hmm. How do I become comfortable with that? How do I find these people and really take time to find these people?
Yeah.
And again, I think it's not letting the fear to you.
That's exactly right.
To just keep on walking and don't give up and don't get scared. Because if you don't scare yourself, nobody can come around and scare you, I think.
Yeah, that's very powerful. You know, I feel like, I'm in the exact same boat, but I have a very different condition, and not really by my choice, but it is what it is, and so I'm dealing with it, and I'm using that as a challenge. My company is venture backed, so I have greedy venture capitalists behind my back telling me that I need to turn this into a big business. And I'm okay with that. You know, like I say it's not my choice because I didn't pursue that. The investors pursued me. It was just at the time when, in 2012, when venture capital was super strong and they were trying to find businesses bringing, you know, old analog business industries online. And so, you know, they just gave me money. Everybody kept giving me money, and it was like monopoly money. And I didn't know how to spend it. I'm grateful for it because that was what was able to launch me into wholesale. Because when you do wholesale business, you have to have large quantities. You can't have just a few kilos like a retailer could. You have to have big quantities, because if a business decides they want to work with you, they're potentially going to order, 20 kilos just like that. So it has to be in your warehouse ready to go. So yeah, that venture capital definitely helped with that. Oh, you guys lost my camera, so I'm gonna turn my other camera on. Yeah, I'm coming.
But I think it's
so yeah, I'm under this pressure to create a big business. And so that's why, I'm not just trying to target tea, but also trying to target other industries as well, and trying to compete with that, fair trade established market that's out there.
Like I said the other day, Elyse, I think, like I said, I'm going to say it again, and I really believe in it, is if anyone were to take money from VCs, it's people like you, because you're actually shaking things up to change the big game. And I really admire your courage and commitment in doing so, because, it's a big game that is, killing the diversity and blah, 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 as we all know it. And I think, money, as much as we hate it, but money does allow you to do things and to go to the steps that you need to be and do the things that you need to do. So, don't let the ethical thing get in the way. I think it's just, and as a business in the world, you gotta, I always say to my team, we gotta make money and we gotta have fun. These are the two things in the business. If we're calling it business, it has to survive. So we have to make money in order to survive. And what you do with the money is your choice, as a business or as a business owner. But I think, we have our own ruler, I guess. And very much of very inspiration to you.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's slow, and that's what I've had to tell my investors. So my investors don't like me, and I whatever, it's fine. I'm going to make them proud one day, but they don't like me because they don't like my business model. They don't like the transparency. They're like, oh, we invested in you because we thought you had control on your supply chain. Can't you just go find cheaper tea somewhere and sell it at a big markup? And I was like, no, my business model is trying to ask the question, like, why was that tea so cheap and who got fucked to make it that cheap, So, but it's fine. You know, it'll all work out. You know, now that I'm diversifying into other crops and trying to bring these ideologies into other products, which, you know, indirectly will come back to benefit, you know, this conversation around tea. You know, for people to see connoisseurship as an act of activism, is very powerful. You know, and I think that's really what we're trying to do, Ray.
I can think at least 10 people will sign up like that immediately.
Connoisseurship as an act of activism. That's good. Yeah, I like that.
Education takes time, and there's always going to be the majority who don't get it and refuse to get it because of ego, because of fear. And I sort of just see that as a sort of the relative reality now, and that's just how it is. And people, I think, like you and Tealet, like your company, is always going to have that disagreement, because this is just how the world is. And I think we find our way, and I think I truly believe it's not within my lifetime I could achieve what I wanted to do. And I have a very pessimistic point of view on where we're going.
I like to remain optimistic, so that's good. Maybe that's why we make a good team. Yeah, I don't know. I like to stay optimistic.
And the rest,
at the core of all of this, we are all people and we all have hearts, you know? So that's what I always say. Like, even when we're talking about like greedy corporate America, it's like, you know, the system itself may actually be fine. The system of capitalism may be fine. It's the you know, fears and motivations of the people within the system that are making that decision. How do we touch their hearts and get their hearts activated to, you know, aid in those decisions becoming more mindful?
You're talking about making Buddhism popular again.
Let's do it. I'm into that. How do we do that respectfully without appropriating anything?
Speak the truth always. And this is what I felt like people are not going to love when you tell them the truth, but people who have the sound, sometimes it takes keep telling it, keep doing it, and I think the right karma is another word that is being abused, so I'm not going to say that. The right consequence, the right result will come, and I think we can only just carry on, and you know, it is what it is, and that's me being very positive.
I just wanted to comment that both on the streams online as well as in the chat box here in the Zoom, I added the link to that list of questions. So that's just a resource that you guys are welcome to use. Yeah, it's just questions, basic questions. I mean, they're questions that you could have come up with, but they're the questions that we use at Tealet to like vet the transparency of a producer. And it can transcend across all products and can be used by the consumer as well. Now, I don't expect you to like hold every single vendor in the world accountable for answering every single question, but it's a start, you know, and asking those questions to your vendors will put that business owner on the path towards finding authenticity themselves.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna start using that. I had a look the other day. I'm going to start using that when I go back next time. Some of them are really, really helpful. Yeah. And I think it's just to start asking the questions. I think that's good enough for, you know, for places that never ask questions before. They've always been told, do this, I'm going to give you this X amount of money. You know, for themselves to ask those questions, then again, it's about them getting their own power back into their own hands, which I think is really, really important. Yeah, and if anyone has wanted us to share anything, in terms of resources or links or anything, I mean, Elyse is more of an encyclopedia here. And if you want to know anything about Guizhou, and I'm happy to be your guide whenever you come, show you around. And if you want to source tea, listen to the stories of what people actually say, what they eat, what they drink, how they dance, and everything on there. So hopefully we'll get together next year in Guizhou there.
Do you do like official organized tours, or do you just like one-off travel with people when they request it?
Both. So for example, like Soham, for example, took Virginia and George and a couple of others. I think there's 9 of them. So that was like a very nice little group. So I can show them to different areas. But in the case of Mafalda and Brad, they just wanted to come. So it's like finding the stories of what they potentially can be sourcing from. Mm-hmm. So then there's a different focus with that. So I think, to me, it's really just about sharing the story, whatever the format is. It really doesn't matter. But I was thinking, I was planning on this, which was to start like a tea people's get together from people like us all across the world, and back to the tea house in Guizhou, and then the tea people locally, the farmers, the pickers, the makers, the tea masters, we all sit at the same table.
We lost her. Let's see if she comes back in at some point. But yeah, I do trips like this as well, Ray. It's really fun. It's really powerful and impactful. I don't do it for tourists. I exclusively welcome the business buyers to travel with me, because it's hard to operate a tour in some of the places that we go to that are really remote, and we have to do homestays and we have to sleep in the factory and work all night. I don't think that's what a tourist is looking to do. They want to stay in a hotel and have nice accommodations. But a tea business owner that really wants to understand the product that they're selling will appreciate that and have fun doing that. So we have a lot of fun, and I call it the Amazing Tea Race because we go everywhere. It's usually like a 2-month trip, and I spend about 3 to 4 days in each spot. And I'm on like 18 different airplanes and 4 different trains and renting cars. Yeah, it's good fun. It's really fun. But I had to cancel this springs, and I'm forecasting that I'm going to have to cancel potentially for the next few years, which I'm fine with. And that's why investing more into these types of spaces has been really important to me. And doing education, and actually now the education that I'm doing is more targeted towards tea professionals, because I've come to learn that a lot of professionals within the industry, which is very much related to what we've been talking about, Ray, that like the information that we get as education, either from like the wholesale vendors or from World Tea Academy or any of these certification classes, that information is like completely controlled by the marketers or controlled by certain people that want to censor the information for you. Even if as a tea buyer, if you go to a tea estate in India and they, you meet the tea boss there, and then they take you out to see the tea field, and then I think even Makai Bari has like a homestay program where like they have you stay in one of the workers' huts or something in the housing. That whole experience is all censored. Like you're not given the truth. You're given like this very cleaned version of what they want you to see, how their plantation works and how their artisanal craft is done. And the same thing in tea education as well. And so there's a lot of frustration among the professionals that there's not a good source. I mean, there's definitely not a like internationally recognized source of education, but just a good source of education as well. And all of them are really expensive and take a lot of time. And, people end up feeling like they didn't really learn what they needed to learn to truly understand tea. So I just launched a series of classes that start on September 1st. We just focus on one tea at a time. It's 45 minutes long. I'll do like a 15 to 20 minute presentation on the tea, its origin, its terroir, its tea maker, and then spend the rest of the time tasting the tea and, telling like personal anecdotes. And I think that's what people resonate with, is personal anecdotes. Like, I think probably in today's talk, the points that have resonated the most with the viewers have probably been our personal stories. More so than our opinions, more so than what we read in a textbook. What I'm doing, I'm not trying to do a certification or, any official tea professional education, but I just want to offer something out there, and let the educators see, what good tea education for professionals in the industry can look like versus what it currently is, which is pretty broken.
That's brilliant. Do let us know how it goes, and it'd be good for us to learn also what you're sharing. And I think because you've been all over the place, seeing it and experiencing it, and I think unfortunately at some point we, as educator or people who are sharing their knowledge, you do need to break the romanticized story and tell people this is what really is happening. And I think I have a big problem with education in general, but also particularly in education in order to get certification. Look, I'm Chinese. We're all about that. We're all about getting certification, and that's what education is for. And this is why I'm so screwed up. And this is me talking about my own experience. Is about you learn there's textbooks and things, they're also curated, they're also censored. So what do you actually learn, and where does the textbook comes from? So I'm with you 100%, because this is precisely why I started the Master's Tea House, because it's all about the information, getting the information straight from the source. Not even me, not even my teachers, but our ancestors thousands of years ago. And they, and there's a quote saying, never trust the teacher, but trust the teachings, who has been transmitted over generations. And I think there's a lack of pool of knowledge out there, even like people who are very curious, good root of wisdom, we say, the little things about to spring from the earth, and then they go on YouTube and they heard some was the poor people, whatever, talk about tea.
Crusaders.
That's ruined. It's like it's like putting chemicals on this tiny little seed, and that's done. And from my experience, it's far way easier to share the knowledge with somebody who knows nothing about tea than people who watched YouTube videos and searched everything on Wikipedia for about 3 years and drank everything there possibly is. It's always easier. So I think education, we really, as me and you, with the younger generation who has the access to our experience and who has the platform and ability to share this, we really need to come from and be very aware of the place where the knowledge comes from, which can be only place that is authenticity. Because that goes back to the cultural appropriation and everything else, because this is how how everything gets so distorted. Me being in London once, I was in a tea professional training place. I was sharing the traditional yellow tea making method, and in that particular method, there is a process called oxidation. But it's sort of like fermenting, but you oxidize it lightly. Mm-hmm. So I was corrected twice, by the authority figure, saying what Ray meant is not that. she actually meant fermentation. Yeah. So the students in presence very confused. What is she saying and what is Ray saying? So this is what I mean. Like, the knowledge we provide doesn't even fit into the current educational system. The way we learn, the way we practice, everything is completely different. So I have to approach it in a different way. And I think really revealing the truth. Just get it as close as we possibly can. And otherwise there's no point. It's just so much poison out there. It's mad.
It's the best way to describe it. Poison. Yeah. Yeah, and I think experience is the best education. I mean, that's all I have to offer people is just creating your own experience, drinking the tea, and because some people they say, oh, I'm thinking about doing this class, and it's like a $5,000 class. It's like I don't know if that definitely won't return that value to you. I mean, if you want to have that experience, then value that in itself. But to think that this certification is magically going to increase your success as a business person or increase your likelihood of getting hired, in the tea industry. And by the way, like that is such a sad thing is like a lot of people get involved in these educations because they want to get a job in the industry. And the only jobs available in the industry are with the big guys. Small businesses, that's not a job. That's a sweat equity investment of your time, co-founder, entrepreneurship thing, So, yeah.
I often find with teaching is actually a lot of it the teaching that I've been experiencing, actually a lot of it is about self-discovery. So there's actually a lot of coaching going on because when you meet a good teacher, it's never about the knowledge itself, but the teacher is so sensitive, so compassionate, so patient in discovering what's in there for you, and then to use the knowledge to guide you through it. And that is the true teaching. And when this sort of certification teaching is another form of cultural appropriation on individuality, because we just want to brainwash people into all the same shape and form in expression, and we can come out and serve the rat race, which is it's not about empowering people. It's not about helping people to find out who they really are, what they find energizing doing, what they wanted to do in order to find joy in jobs. All of these things is the way to educate that is so outdated. Well, I would say outdated. Actually, it's gone off the authentic path of teaching, which is about knowing your students, and the student have faith in the teaching, and the teacher also have faith in the student, and it's about nurturing their own nature and really be there to guide them. And that is not what modern world education is. So I think, for me, it's very important to be alert. Like, even like what I say, sometimes it's very tricky. You need to be very aware as somebody who's sharing knowledge. Mm-hmm. But I think we all need to be aware of that as an elder sharing knowledge with the younger or the less experienced. They need love and nurturing, and we need to see that and to do that for them. Which I think, again, it's a slow game. but I think that actually serves me better teaching one person than 10.
Definitely. Well, because then they'll go and teach another person and another person and another person if you leave that impression. Yeah. That's
the future. I think education is so important, particularly with young people. And my experience with younger people who are 21 or 20, or all the if you're under 22, you come on any of the courses we're running, it's free. And I realized they are so switched on. Like, if I was like them when I was 20, I'll be a fairy now. Like, I'll be a saint. They're so woke, they're so fantastic, and they know exactly what they're gonna do. They know what's evil, what's good, and they have a very strong compass. They know where to shop. They're just out there. They have the information. So that gives me hope. And when these people come and, for example, hear a course on living tea, that's going to change their whole perception of knowing tea. And that, to me, it gets me laughing, waking up at night. I think it's just so great. And I think, the generation, the education on younger people, it's definitely something that all of us.
Yeah, I'm in full support of the Zebellion.
The right guys.
The Zebellion is a Pentagon document here in the United States where the military is thinking that in 2025 and peaking in 2028, so in 5 years, Generation Z, who is this generation you're talking about, are going to hack and completely destroy all the corporate interests and basically.
I cannot.
Yeah, I'm in full support of it. I know I'm not part of that generation, but if they need a leader, I'm more than happy to help.
Yeah, which is, I think, is going to be very exciting. A new decade ahead.
Yeah.
Look what's already happening around us. So, that's the optimistic side of the pessimistic person. Yeah, Elyse, thank you so much for sharing all of your stories and your thoughts. And would you like to conclude a few key points for everyone to take away today?
Yeah, drink good tea. And, if you can't afford a lot of it, then don't drink a lot of it. There you go. That's it.
Simplistic, like that.
But you can reach out to me, Elyse at Tealet.com. I'm doing a lot of live streaming through our social channels at Tealet Tea. And I put the link in the chat for that series of classes. It's 20 different classes. You can do as many as you want. Of course, the more classes you do, the lower the price per class it is. But let's stay in touch. We'll keep the fight going. This is my life, so don't feel like you'd be bothering me to send me an email or reaching out. I'm very happy to help.
Thank you, and do let us know how to support in terms of the courses and everything else. And we're here for each other, and I think all these people hearing us ranting for 2 hours, that we can consider them as family now. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and for the very beautiful time shared together, sipping tea and just express ourselves. I think, to me, what I take away with is it gives me hope. It makes me also feel that although we're very small, but we're not alone. And whenever there's a tea sharing table there, it always makes me feel like that, and I'm sure most people resonate. So it gives me such clarity in also what I, as personally and also as grass people tree going ahead. We keep on sharing. So we're gonna have a range of different talks like this format. Stop being sustainable is gonna keep on every other week. And there's also other talks. I definitely don't think this is the last time Elyse and I are gonna be ranting on this. on this particular topic. So do tune back in 2 weeks and check out on the Tea House on different subjects of things that we're sharing. And if you have any thoughts you wanted to share with us, all of us, and please just drop me a line, and be good to hear from you. And thank you, friends around the world, family around the world, and have a good evening, day, and the rest of the weekend. Thank you so much.